Ladies and gentlemen, let's kick off today's super interesting panel. No pressure. And quite high level about the intriguing Tallinn Helsinki tunnel. Today we have the Estonian Minister of Economic Affairs and Infrastructure, Kadri Simson. The National Digital Advisor of Estonian government, Marten Kaevats. And the main man behind kind of having this on the table, Peter Vesterbacka from FinEstBay Area.
Thank you.
And I am Kristjan Lepik from company that previously was Teleport, then was MooGuys, now is Topia from this week. And we are helping companies to relocate people globally based on software. So, yeah, applause. Yeah. But with that, we see how much the world is changing. And we also see, I think that a really great kind of saying was from one of our advisors, Parag Khanna, who said that we are wasting too much pixels and lines on the maps drawing country borders. Whereas instead of that, we should be drawing connections. It doesn't matter where exactly the borders are, but it does matter so much in today's world how tightly, economically, culturally, and in many other layers we are tied to other countries, cities, and parts of the countries. So that's why I think that today's discussion is super important and crucial. And I'm intrigued myself as well to hear what those great minds have to say. And we will start with Peter with the introduction about the project.
Very good, yeah, so let's do that. Yeah, so I totally agree that this is a super important project. But I kind of actually got involved in the project almost 2 years ago now, and it was actually here in Tallinn, and I was at the Latitude 59 conference, and we're just sitting there at the dinner table, and of course, as you all know, when Finnish and Estonian people meet, then always discussion about like, okay, how did you get here on the ferry and like all of that, and then we ended up discussing the fact that, okay, it would be very cool if we finally got this like tunnel done so that we could, get across the water a bit faster. And then I basically said that, okay, let's like get it done. And I walked over to the next table and happened to have the foreign minister of Estonia. So she was sitting there, and I said that we actually just decided to build a tunnel. And I thought that it's like good to inform the government that we're doing it. So, following like official process. And then of course she like asked that like who exactly, and then I said, yeah, me, and then like you see those guys in the table, we decided to build it. And of course she laughed, and then and didn't like take it very seriously. And then that like following weekend we had this hackathon for the construction industry in Finland. And I was asked to do like an inspirational speech and talk a little bit about like what we could learn from like IT industry and construction and all of that. And then I also mentioned that, yeah, that I'm now like actually getting more involved in like building things and construction because we decided to make this tunnel happen. And then actually exactly like here, you always need to kind of like be a bit careful what you say, because that was also kind of like it was a small hackathon, but it was streamed live on the internet. And then what happened the following day was that Helsingin Sanomat, a reporter called me and said that he just saw this like presentation that I made, that this must be like some kind of joke, right? I said, no, very serious, like that we're building this tunnel and it's going to be done in 5 years. And then I got contacted by like this GTK, it's like this geological survey office in Finland, and they were like super excited that they have been studying this like for 20 years, and it's actually, as I said, very easy to build this, that, like it's all like bedrock, from Helsinki to Tallinn, and then you get to Tallinn and then there's a bit of sand and clay, but it's actually very easy to kind of like get this done. And then I also was, I had already like set the timeline that it will take 5 years. Actually, at the same time, there was in the news reports about the Gotthard tunnel that had just been completed under the Alps. And it was the longest, and it actually still is the longest railroad tunnel in the world. It's, and then when I read about that, it said that it took almost 20 years. So of course I got a bit concerned that, okay, 5 years, 20 years, and our tunnel is like 100 kilometers. But then started talking to some of our friends at Pöyry. So I saw that they had been involved in the Gotthard tunnel, and we started talking to them, and they said that actually it's much easier to build tunnels under the water than under the Alps. Because what we can do is we can actually take these TBMs, so these tunnel boring machines, and we can put them, you know, like not only will we start boring from Helsinki and from Tallinn side, but we will also do that in the middle of the sea. So basically we create these two islands and we drill in both directions. So we will be drilling in 6 directions at any given time. So we'll have 12 of these tunnel boring machines. And then that means that we can complete the physical like tunnel construction in less than 2 years. And then we just do like a few stations and we're done in 5 years. And the first trains will be running the 24th of December 24. And it's actually not even difficult. And you don't have to trust my word for that. I mean, if you ask the leading experts, so we now have in the consortium, we have Pöyry, we have EINS, and we have FIRA. So these are the best experts on underground construction anywhere in the world. So if you look at the tunnel, that is not really like a very difficult project. But then now we have this like video running in the background and like various hashtags and all of that. So if you take a few steps back and we look at kind of like then some of the justifications and why this is important. So all of us have grown up with these maps of Europe and the EU, where typically, you know, if you look at the upper right-hand corner, you see Estonia, and then a bit further up, obviously, you have, typically on the European maps, you have a bit of Finland. So, you know, you might see Helsinki, and then it maybe goes up to Jyväskylä, but then it's cut off, and, you know, like, and it basically creates this illusion of Estonia and Finland somehow being at the periphery, you know, and I think that that is a very bad message, but because if you really look at the world, we are actually at the center. So we are right here in the middle. You know, on one side we have Europe, on the other side we have Asia. So we are actually really at the core. And I have been talking many years about the fact that we are, if you look at Helsinki and Tallinn, we are at the heart of Eurasia. Around us we have 5 billion people. 70% of the world's population is right next door. I mean, good example of that, today I will get on the ferry, go back to Helsinki, I go to the airport, 6 hours later I'm in Delhi. And, you know, roughly 7 hours later I would be in Beijing, 8 hours to Shanghai, a bit over 8 hours, 9 hours I'm in Tokyo. We are the closest neighbor of not only China, but also India and Japan. And that's a fact. If you walk around the streets of Helsinki early Sunday or Saturday morning, what do you see? Actually, the only thing you see, the only life in the streets of Helsinki early weekend mornings. Asian tourists, actually. And that's also when we came over with the ferry yesterday, what language do you hear besides like Finnish and Estonian? Chinese. So there's actually a massive influx of Asian tourists. When I was actually in India, in Mumbai and Delhi and Andhra Pradesh in February, we had a delegation of actually Finnish and Estonian startups. And then I was giving a talk at this event called TAI, so it's like this Indian entrepreneurship society. It's probably the biggest entrepreneurship society on the planet. So they started in Silicon Valley, but they're very active in like every city in India, and there's like a few thousand people there. First thing that happened when I walked in there was that I ran into one of the organizers, and then he said that Peter, I just went to Rovaniemi with my family and a few other families. The most beautiful place I have ever seen. And I say, okay, that's like pretty cool. And then he explained that, yeah, and it was like so beautiful, like white and snow and all of that. And one day we decided that we looked at, can you go out and walk by the river? That, it's like very cold and all that. But we decided that maybe go out for 20 minutes. And I said, guess what? We ended up walking for 6 hours and we went into the jungle and everything. And then I was like, wow. And I have never been to the jungle in Rovaniemi, but I'm sure it's great. But what was very interesting there, and I think that this is something that what we don't realize here is that this is actually reality. I mean, it's really for many Indian people, for many Chinese people, it is the most beautiful place in the world. It's like amazing. They've never seen anything like that. Many of them have never seen snow. So we have many of these things that people don't realize. We kind of like take it for granted. But very, very basic things are fantastic. And the interesting thing is that I spent a week with the Finnish Estonian delegation in India, and this was not the exception. I ran into many people who were saying that they had been to Rovaniemi. And actually they weren't talking about Finland, they weren't talking about Estonia, but they just told me that, they were to Rovaniemi and the northern lights and the snow and like all of that. So again, I have to kind of like give lots of credit to the people in Rovaniemi that they have done a fantastic job branding their city and all of that. But then if you look at Helsinki and Tallinn, we have a fantastic opportunity and we have a fantastic story to tell. Because every time when I tell people that I go to China like twice a month, and then people are like, but that's like a lot. And then I say, no, it's like easy. I mean, I get on the plane in Helsinki and 6 hours later I'm in Beijing. I can do a day trip, no problem. And then, like especially when you talk to Americans, especially people from the Silicon Valley, I mean, they are far, far away from everywhere. To get anywhere is like 15 hours. China is far away, all the biggest markets are far away. Of course, there are a few people doing innovation in Silicon Valley, but again, it's not like at the center of the world like we are. So I think that that's something that is very important to keep in mind. But it's just like reality. But we need to also be much better in Finland, much better in Estonia of sharing that reality and explaining that that is the way it is. I mean, we have the best connectivity to Asia. I can get to Beijing and Shanghai, obviously, but I can get to Chongqing, Xi'an, Nanjing, Guangzhou, all of those places. Direct flights. And I can get to Tokyo and Osaka and Nagoya. But did you know that I can also get to Fukuoka? And you probably never even heard about Fukuoka, but it's one of the startup epicenters in Japan. And so on and so on. And as I mentioned, tonight I'm going to Delhi, and it's like a short trip. So it really is reality, and we need to be better at communicating it. Last week we had Slush in Tokyo. 6,000 people showed up. It's organized by 600 young people in Japan. And Helsinki was there. And we had the mayor, Jan Vapaavuori, there. And I think that they did a very good job and explaining exactly this, that we're Japan's closest neighbor in Europe. But then I was also talking to Janne, mayor, that we should do this together. Helsinki and Tallinn, we should talk about what we are doing together, the tunnel and everything. But it's really like one metropolitan area. And it's a much more interesting story when we do that. I was actually also in London. So there was this opening of the LHV bank, branch office in London. So we're there at the center, at the core of the city of London. And so then Thomas Ilves and myself, and then Michael something, who does these rankings of the financial centers. So the number 1 is London, New York, Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo. Tallinn is number 68. Helsinki is not even on the list. And number 68 is, of course, better than nothing, but it's not amazing. And if you look at then Helsinki, we should be ashamed of ourselves that we're not even there. But I think that it was very interesting discussion because then, of course, when you're in London, what do you end up discussing? Brexit. And then we heard that, that London will be fine because London has always, been like the center of the world, and there is all these jobs in the financial services industry, and it's basically we were told that London will continue being, at the center. And then of course I couldn't shut up, and I had to say, and they were also explained about the empire. And then I said that okay, that I think that and of course they also brought up that they speak English apparently. And then I said that okay, that it's very interesting, but I think that whenever you have to use the empire as an argument for why London will be at the core of financial services, I think that you are a bit on shaky ground or thin ice. And then I explained that actually if you look at now Helsinki and Tallinn, we're building this tunnel, so in 20 minutes you're going to get from Ülemiste to the airport in Helsinki, and it's kind of like a metropolitan area that it's bigger than Stockholm, bigger than Amsterdam. Everybody in Helsinki and Tallinn speak English, and we actually speak English. We speak English that you can actually understand, which is a big plus. And then another very important thing that we are right next door to China. So it's very tough for you guys here in the UK and in London because you really are at the periphery of, at the edges of Europe, and actually you're leaving. So I think that, and then what I also said that what I Beijing Beijing da, sjö sile bagachin chi do hanyu, dan sjö wada hanyu haibuan mei. And then I asked the audience there in the city of London, we had a few hundred people, that okay, how many speak Mandarin? One person, only one. I said that you guys are in some serious trouble. I mean, we are next door to China, short flight. Many people in Helsinki and Tallinn more and more speak Chinese, and actually we have a massive influx of Chinese families that are moving to Finland, to Estonia, because we have the best schools on the planet. So we're actually going to give you guys a big run for your money now with Brexit. So you better watch out. So this is actually why we're building the tunnel. It's important to make it easy, for us to go back and forth. We're creating one metropolitan area. It's going to be actually the fastest growing metropolitan area in all of Europe, easily. So we're going to beat Stockholm. Stockholm has been the fastest growing metro area for many years. And what you see there in the video is actually some of the renders of kind of the future that is actually arriving pretty soon. One reason we're doing the tunnel, we have 4 stations, Ülemiste, the island station, Otaniemi, Keilaniemi station, and airport station. Around all the stations we'll have new apartments for 50,000 people. So in the metro area we'll have room for 200,000 additional people. Why? Because we don't want to become the next Stockholm or the next Silicon Valley. Meaning that if you look at the biggest obstacle for Spotify to keep growing is that they can't attract talent because they can't afford to live in Stockholm. Or when I talk to my friends in Silicon Valley, they have good jobs at Google or Facebook or one of the other well-known Silicon Valley brands. Then you ask them that, okay, where do you live? Oh, actually I live with 11 other Indian people in the same room. And this is not even a joke. So then I typically tell them that, if you come to Helsinki or Tallinn, some people have their own room. I have even heard about people who have their own apartment. How cool is that? Have you thought about lifestyle that you could have your own room? And then they're like, wow, when can I move? But anyway, so that's why we're doing the tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And now let's start the panel. So, Kadri, what do you think, what are your views on the project? Surely you probably like the idea, but to kind of get to the more practical side, how realistic does it seem to you?
Well, first of all, I can't help but I have to compliment the organizers because they couldn't have picked a better venue than this windowless black box. Because maybe you noticed that outdoors there is first spring day, sun is shining, and you might start to wonder that maybe the idea to take a ferry trip is not such a bad idea. But good news for us is that we don't have to spend too much time here inside, and the same will happen with a future train ride in the using undersea tunnel. Like Peter mentioned, it might take as short as 30 minutes from Tallinn Ülemiste to center of Helsinki. And if we consider the option that maybe current brave ideas about the future transport solutions will be one day a reality, I mean Hyperloop, then it might take as short as 6 till 8 minutes. So these kind of opportunities definitely look very attractive. At the same time, we have to keep in mind that we are talking about tunnel that will be as long as 105 kilometers, and this is twice as long as current longest subsea tunnel, which is quite a challenge. At the same time, first feasibility studies show us that the base under our sea is very favorable, and that might mean that the cost of this tunnel is not higher than it was when Eurotunnel was built, the Channel Tunnel. And of course we know that even this tunnel was under great threat of bankruptcy.
Yeah, but this is a much better business case because London and Paris are like 3 hours apart, so they are different cities. This is like a metro line between two neighborhoods, and I think Paris-London is, yeah, it's pretty much like a disaster if you look at the Channel Tunnel from business perspective, and I think that's the good news here is that we are already, I mean, Helsinki is the biggest passenger harbor on the planet, and it keeps growing, and I think that this is something that, again, also coming over the ferry yesterday, I mean, it was packed, and I expect it to be packed when I go back, and we paid like 30 euros for our tickets one way because we were like pretty late. Our friend paid like 35. So I think that it's also it's very easy to kind of like make the business case just based on passenger traffic.
Yeah, that's very true. We see growing numbers for our ports. Right now there are 9 million travelers each year, and the numbers are growing. So definitely this chance for tunnel is a passenger traffic, but at the same time the freight traffic is also a important part for us, especially when we are keeping in mind that one day we will have a Rail Baltica, and we definitely want to see that the end station is not Muuga or Tallinn, but we will have a connection with Finland.
Yeah. One of the others, I would like to support Peter that the Channel Tunnel case study is not a very good example. You should more look at, for example, Copenhagen-Malmö case, because the Channel Tunnel actually had 3 strategical errors while building it. They were just inventing the technology, they did it there were several mistakes. I'm an architect, city planner by background, currently working for the government. For me, this process, first and foremost, I think it's totally doable. There is no question about it. What Peter is suggesting is something that is realistic and something that we should definitely work on. But for me, basically working in the Estonian bureaucratic domain, it's the interesting case study with this idea is, and I think this is Raivo Vare, an Estonian strategical thinker, said it the first. This is an interesting case study where we can see the disruption of large-scale infrastructure projects, because usually infrastructure projects are done in a way that, such as the governmental projects currently between Tallinn and Helsinki, they do studies for years and years. They try to avoid all mistakes and blah, blah, blah. And this takes a lot of time, and maybe they do it, maybe they don't. But this is the first time that you consider an infrastructure project as a startup. And this is something that we should definitely see into, definitely should work on. But my biggest kind of problem or worry that about this idea, and I'm looking at currently, of course, from the Estonian side, is that Estonians and Finns are somewhat different. One of them being that the Finnish actually plan their future. And I would say that in Estonia, we lack any long-term planning, such as, for example, Matti Maasikas yesterday wrote in the newspaper. We can be agile, we can be fast. Our wins have been made in a tactical way, but we lack the long-term planning, and Finns have that. And this for Estonians is actually, in a way, a good thing and a bad thing. But for the Estonian apparatus, the bureaucratic system, to see this disruption happening means two very important changes have to make. First, we need to get this project on the move. We need to get the environmental assessments, we need to do all of those things, we need to start digging, that's it. And to do that, actually we don't need any money, we need to think differently. It's a question of mindset. And secondly, it's about value creation locally. It's about the way how we in Estonia can think about how we can keep the value creation within the ecosystem. And the ecosystem now is Estonia, Finland and Helsinki together. It's not about only keeping everything to us, also here, because when we make this project happen, yes, of course, we will have unprecedented financial growth for several, probably decades. The question is whether it will be basically maybe random numbers, but whether this financial growth will be 10% or 20%, and this extra 10 comes from the changing of mindset and changing of the bureaucratic structure, how we do and think about things. And this is a bigger change that, I don't know if it is possible. I'm also looking at the mirror because I'm working within this framework, but usually the Estonian the digital pitch or the advertisement for Estonia, I do that a lot. I go around explaining about the digital society in Estonia, is that we can be fast. And now with this process, I would really want to see that we could be fast, but I'm not sure if we're able to.
I am sure you will.
Thank you, Marten. Those were some good thoughts. Now, we've had some different estimates when this will be ready. 2040, 2024. There's quite a gap in between. Yeah. Not as big as the Gulf, but...
yeah, but I think that what is like cool about the future is that it will be what we make it to be. So I think that we just need to decide if we want the tunnel like sometime in the 40s, or if you want to have it, up and running the 24th of December 24. And I know that we can have that done, and we have actually left a lot of buffer to get the permits. So right now the team is very busy working together with the Ministry of the Environment in Finland to get the permits in place. So the environmental permits will take the longest time. We're actually now using as a model this kind of like Äänekoski model. So that was actually this biofactory that was built in record time in Finland. The permits were done in record time. So we're using that as kind of like the benchmark and as the model for getting environmental permits kind of like in a streamlined fashion. So it doesn't take like many years. We can actually get that done. Of course, I've been saying many times publicly that we want to start construction already this year. And I'm always told that it's like unrealistic. Maybe it is, but I think that also it's very important that we keep up the pressure and so that everybody understands that this is not something that we'll like wait around, we'll do a few more studies and then maybe we have something in the 40s. And I know that if we do that model, we will not have anything before like the 50s. It's just like we've seen so many examples. I mean, Rail Baltica was mentioned, and we have many of these projects that are not happening like super fast, and they are not happening at a very good like ambition level either. So I think that that this is from a technical perspective, yes, it's over 100 kilometers, but actually it's not a very like big engineering challenge in the end. I mean, the length of the tunnel doesn't really add to the challenge. And again, as I said, you don't have to trust my word for that. You can ask Pöyry, you can ask the Eyins guys, so they know.
And in terms of tunnel boring, I really do trust the Finnish, because the world's longest tunnel is actually in Finland, the FinEstBay water tunnel from Helsinki. So it's already 120 kilometers. So this 100 is like doable.
Yeah, easy.
Kadri?
Well, in my opinion, we just finished the discussion approximately 5 minutes ago when Marten, who works for the Estonian government, declared that he is ready to start digging as soon as possible. So
Excellent.
what else can we say? Well, from government side, we have formed a task force between Estonian Ministry of Economy and Finnish Ministry of Transport, and also involved Finnish Helsinki city government and Tallinn city government. And the task force is ready to prepare this kind of future schedule for governments to decide, and we will have united government session in 7th of May. So basically, if we would fulfill all the necessary criteria, if we would discuss that we will do all the environmental and geological studies, then definitely it takes more than a year. And I myself, I do believe that we need studies before we can start digging. But I do appreciate this kind of enthusiasts, because without this kind of pressure, the movement would be too slow, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that, again, getting the permits done in 2 years is perfectly okay, because that leaves us with like 3 years to get the tunnel built, and then we'll have the trains running the 24th of December 24. So we're like perfectly on time with that. And also, if you look at then, getting like the technical plan, we're now working on that. So we will have a much more detailed plan to present actually by the 7th of May, which is of course a very important date, because we have both governments in a joint session. Then I think also what is big part of the discussion, and already touched on that okay, what will it cost? And we have stayed to our original number, and there is nothing that would prove otherwise. So it will cost 15 billion euros to build this, and that is a tunnel of a bit over 100 kilometers, 4 stations, so Ülemiste Island, Otaniemi, Keilaniemi area on the Finnish side, and the airport area. And that will give us a 20-minute connection time between airport to airport. So the trains will be running bit under 400 kilometers an hour. So that's kind of like the normal speed in China, in Japan. So that's just like, it's not rocket science. There's no hyperloop, there's no like technical risk. It's just standard fast rail that has been deployed for thousands of kilometers. I was actually, as I mentioned, in Tokyo last week. I had the family with me, so one day we went to Kyoto, jumped on a train. They're running the fast trains with like 11-minute intervals. It took me 2 hours, 20 minutes to get to Kyoto, a trip that would take over 6 hours by car. And it was like perfectly on time, very convenient, very easy. So if Japanese can run trains like that, we can do that in Finland and Estonia, like no problem. China can do it, so why would we be worse than our Chinese friends? So I think technically there is kind of like, there's no hyperloop, there's no like unproven technology, it's all proven. And then if you look at the 15 billion, of course it's a lot of money. We have already heard from both Finnish and Estonian government that there is no funding available or to be expected on the public side. The EU has made it very clear that they see more important bottlenecks elsewhere. So, waiting for the EU to cough up with some funding is like waiting for Santa Claus. Sometimes you get what you want, sometimes not. And I mean, Finland, of course, home of Santa Claus, so we're very familiar with this kind of Santa Claus model. So I think that even though I'm wearing red, I'm and Santa Claus is a good friend of mine, and I don't think that he is bringing us 15 billion either. So what our plan is to raise that privately, and when you build a good business case, it's just like in any startup that if you have a good business case, you have a good team, you will get the investment. So some of the money might come from Japan, some of it might come from China, some of it might come from the US, and I know that we need to be careful with accepting American money with Trump and everything, but maybe it's okay. So we can maybe also take some American money, and then local pension funds. And to start with, we will raise some tens of millions, then we will need hundreds of millions, and then towards the end of the project, we'll have to have the billions. But we have a very solid plan for getting the funding together, and we will also be presenting that in May. So again, I stick to my kind of original statement that in 24 trains will be running.
So, great. To explain my optimism towards this idea and project, I think I worked on this project as a city planner something like 9 years ago. And I did my calculations and some ideas as well. But I think from a strategical point of view, in long-term planning, we and the Finns have got nothing to lose here. Yes, we do need to make the assessments and analytics because we need to be clear, at least in an environmental basis, but we have got nothing to lose. So in case of, a trickster like Peter coming up and now saying that, hey, let's do it, then we should start our processes and think differently. But again, I think it's a question of mindset. And secondly, what is different and what we need to think differently is that this is not an infrastructure project. This is a cultural, this is a community, this is an economical project, and mainly it's a city planning project. It's a question of planning real estate as well. Because the main benefit does not come from tickets and cargo. The main benefit comes from creating this metropolitan area and actually creating the basically economic drivers to I don't know, boost economic growth and cultural connections and whatnot. And for that, we need to actually start already thinking about this region as a whole. We need to start marketing us as a whole. We are not selling Estonia, we are not selling Finland, we are not selling Tallinn, we are not selling Helsinki, we are selling everyone together. And this is a mindset shift that needs to take place. And this task force that Kadri mentioned actually is a very, very good start to start pushing this thinking and exchanging the information. And again, but looking for it again a bit from the Tallinn side, then though Peter mentioned that it will start from Ülemiste and so on, then I think this is a thing that we need to think again a bit. Ülemiste is a very, very good option, but I really think that we should have a station in the center of the city as well, again, saying about the economical growth, the community, the cultural drivers. And for that, I think I have already, from the government office side, we will start basically a city planning assessment of different locations to investigate the potential economical growth in terms of taxes and different scenarios and options. And Ülemiste is definitely one of the strongest options here. And why not even perhaps, I know that you have said that you don't want to make 2 stops in Tallinn, but we could make different options and actually assess the feasibility, because from a government point of view and the municipality point of view, the income does come from taxes rather than tickets. So if we put that in the economic assessment, like the feasibility study for the governmental project came out in the beginning of February, and this is a feasibility study that only assesses tickets, people going and cargo going. But if we actually consider the wider economical impact and coming from the location where the station is located, then it's totally different ball game. And as Peter mentioned, the question about having actually cheap real estate available for the providing for the growth, meaning that having places to live and having places to have, I don't know, dinner and party in is really, really necessary. And this is, I think, the main obstacle. when I previously mentioned that can our apparatus change, then the case is, then can we keep the value creation here? It means that can we create a city that can sustain this level of growth? And I think this is the problems we should be looking at from the Estonian side. My personal opinion on that.
Well, I think that that's a very important point, and I think that of course we need to look at the cities now and kind of like then the whole metropolitan area when we plan kind of like the traffic network. And I think we had a very good discussion in Shanghai when we were talking to some of the potential like tunnel constructors that because we're planning to do kind of like a tunnel that will have be 70 meters in diameter. And then the Chinese asked that okay, that allows us to put anything in there. So it's like a big tunnel. And they said that, will you put cars there? And then I explained that no, we will only put fast rail. Why? Because if you look at the metropolitan areas across Europe, what has happened, and that is happening at least in Helsinki, I think same in Tallinn, that actually the penetration of driver's licenses with young people has been going down. So people are not getting driver's licenses at all because they don't need a car. And if you look at now with kind of like the future of mobility and all of that, so what I explained to the Chinese that actually what we want to do is that we want to create the future of mobility. And they said that, okay, can they be part of it? Can we do the same for Shanghai? And I said, of course. We have lots of like amazing startups that can help you do that. So the tunnel is not just a tunnel, it's also something that creates gravity. It will attract all the leading mobility players. We already saw Toyota invest in this Mass Global startup in Finland. We're seeing a lot of the global players coming here to Helsinki. Why? Because we're leading this. And they are hearing about the tunnel, they're hearing about all the great things that we have already done and that we will be doing. And then they realize that, hey guys, you're like at the heart of Eurasia. You're like next door to everything, all the biggest markets. So I think that this is something that's very important. And then maybe also to Martin's point about, you know, like, okay, 1 station, 2 stations, all that. I think that the traffic will change. There will be a lot of autonomous vehicles in the streets of Tallinn and Helsinki. So we also need to take that into account. And I think that we should plan. We shouldn't plan for like new bottlenecks. We should also, like what we're doing now on the Helsinki side, and that was in the video that was running in the background, that we have looked at how the tunnel connection integrates not only with Helsinki, but with the whole like traffic like system in Finland. We want to have a fast connection to Tampere. So you can, in an hour, you can be from Tallinn, you can end up in the center of Tampere or Turku. And also, of course, we need to think about other major cities in this FinEstBay Area, St. Petersburg. We need to get to St. Petersburg in an hour and a half from the airport in Helsinki. And then you start seeing that then it becomes like a bit more dynamic and will like fix Russia as well. So I think that that's something that we also need to keep in mind, that this enables us to do some pretty amazing things. So it's really not about the tunnel, it's about doing things together. And yes, of course, it needs to integrate with Rail Baltica and like all of that. And I have been saying many times that Finland should also take a much more active role in making Rail Baltica much better. The ambition level there, if we're talking about having trains running at 160 kilometers through Poland, I mean, that is like pathetic. That's like if China runs trains at 400 kilometers an hour and we are planning a new connection to Europe that is running at 160 kilometers, we will never be able to compete with China. We'll never be able to compete with even India. The Japanese are building fast rail in India right now that is much faster than 160 kilometers an hour. So why would we build some kind of like, 160 kilometer connection? I mean, that's like totally unacceptable, at least from my perspective, that we need to do much better.
Do you want to add something, Kadri?
Well, Marten and Peter, they covered so many different topics, but well, basically I can only approve this message, Peter's message, that the Chinese are very eager and very interested to invest and build some kind of infrastructure in Europe, and definitely they have the knowledge. So just yesterday I had a chance to meet with Tallinn airport authorities, and just to show that the idea of tunnel is already, well, in reality, when this kind of infrastructure like airport makes their future plans, then we were already discussing that what will happen when one day there will be a tunnel that brings passengers less than half an hour to Vantaa airport. And does it mean that Tallinn airport one day will be Terminal 2 or Terminal 3 for Vantaa? But this doesn't bother us much, because right now we see growing passenger numbers as 19% per year, so definitely we need a additional terminal close to Tallinn.
Yeah, and I think that it's fantastic if the Tallinn airport is like a terminal of the Helsinki airport, or if the Helsinki airport is like a terminal of the Tallinn airport. I mean, then it's like the Helsinki-Tallinn airport, and it's like the best airport on the planet. I mean, like, come on, I mean, I think that this is, like, again, the thinking that we need to have, that of course not, is the Helsinki airport competing with the Tallinn airport. I don't think that, like, it's, again, it adds to the opportunity. I mean, one thing that is fantastic, that when you get from Helsinki airport to the Tallinn airport in 20 minutes, that's faster than you can change between terminals at Heathrow. I mean, really. And I've been there many times, and it always takes more than 20 minutes, always. So I think that this is something, again, that we can offer bigger capacity. If you look at the growth of the traffic from China, from Japan, from India at Helsinki, I mean, we'll run out of capacity before we know it. I mean, people don't even realize what kind of growth we're going to see here.
And my next question is related to that. Sometimes for people it's hard to see the future or the change that technology or new solutions bring before it's out there. When it's there, it's understandable to everybody. But sometimes it requires this kind of vision about the change as well. So what are the things, kind of in addition to kind of being really fast, able to go from one airport to another, what are the things that will change in people's lives with the tunnel, or what will be different?
First, I would like to add that Peter's idea of making this 17-meter huge tunnel is future-proof. That's the thing about this idea. There is so much room in this space that you can put whatever in. It's the fast train, it could be Hyperloop when Hyperloop is feasible and working. It could be a skiing marathon during summer, because you can do that, it can fit there. You can desynchronize Estonia and the Baltic states from the Russian electricity grid, because you would need to have this very heavy-duty cable in it. You can do a whole lot of things with this infrastructure. And with the idea of cultural impact of what these kind of technologies and these kind of connections can enable in terms of culture, then I would consider this as basically a public transport project. This is a metro. This is not like a train. This is a metro. This is one single city and basically a tram, like or a metro between those things. And if you can go like from this location here, you can go to Helsinki faster than you can go to Nõmme or Viimsi, then you can think about this as a single city. From a government point of view, I think the best thing about this is actually creating common infrastructure between the two capitals. This means that, for example, if you would need some very specific machine in a very specific hospital for cancer treatment, for example, or others, then we don't need to buy two of these machines. We can buy only one. And this kind of sharing infrastructure that is very costly, we can do that with having this kind of a connection in place. Also more cooperation with universities, talent attraction, your business, because we need to make this region sexy, and we also need to keep the identities of the two, because everybody knows Helsinki is still a bit different than Tallinn, and I think this is the point where Tallinn can actually think and define our identity, what can attract people here. And as I mentioned before, then the Finns actually can plan and we don't. Then I think that this is in a way a good thing, because we are free, we are open, we are tactical, we are fast. Finns have a long-term planning, which is a very good thing, and we should learn from that. But we should play on the cards that we are strong on, and create this identity around the things that we are strong in.
And I think this is very, very important that, and I would put it this way, that kind of like Tallinn makes Helsinki better, and Helsinki hopefully makes Tallinn better. And I mean, and it's actually the same kind of like place, it's the same metropolitan area, but of course with very unique characteristics. And I think that this is again that then you can, you can fly in and you can basically visit many fantastic places in Helsinki, in Tallinn, and I think that it's just the mindset here that when you have a fast connection, it changes the behavior. But exactly as you said there, that it's kind of like easy to understand that yes, okay, now I can get between the city areas or the neighborhoods or however you want to put it faster. But I think that even if you can like understand that, you really don't, because we had a very long and not very nicely executed West Metro project in Helsinki and Espoo, and it's one of these things that even though everybody knew that yes, the metro is coming and there will be a nice connection between these areas, it was only when it opened that people actually then started to understand, oh wow, I can buy an apartment here next to the metro station, and 5 minutes later I'm in downtown. And even when you knew that the metro is coming, the behavior only really changed when it was really there. So it's one of these things that just looking at what has happened there, now when we'll have this metro connection between Helsinki and Tallinn, then when it's there, in 24, then behavior changes. Then you can agree with your friends here in Tallinn that, oh, I'll come and let's do lunch together. And these kind of things, that it's not that you come for a day, but you come for a lunch or a breakfast or a dinner or a concert, or you come and watch the Tallinn Tigers ice hockey game, for example, that will be playing in the Finnish league. Why not? So these kind of things will start happening.
Kristjan, you were asking what kind of innovation it brings us. And basically, I think that from our point of view, well, the biggest benefit for us is that you don't have to move to Finland to earn better salary. You can live here. And,
or I would say that and some people will move to Tallinn because of the better salaries. Maybe.
That might be true too, because, previously it was mentioned Öresund region and the bridge and tunnel that connects Malmö and Copenhagen. That's exactly what has happened. In both regions, the salaries have grown faster than
the Swedes are going to Copenhagen to do the waiting at the cafes and the cleaning and all of that. So yeah.
But if we don't take a tunnel only as a transport project, and we don't definitely only transport project wouldn't be economically feasible, but despite of that, it brings us a huge amount of passengers who arrive in the center of Helsinki or Tallinn without their own private cars. And this definitely brings us solutions for sharing or new solutions for public transportation. So this is for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is very important there, that of course we'll see harmonization between many different areas, and when you have a 20-minute connection, it means that things like salaries and taxes and many things will kind of start to be more of the same, which I think is again not a bad thing. And we need to kind of plan for that as well, that it's a little bit like the West Metro example, that all of a sudden it's there. I can have an apartment in Helsinki and I can work in Tallinn, or the other way around. I mean, it's again like, because it's the same city, it's the same metropolitan area, everything is like next door. And I think that this is something that, again, we don't realize, we can like understand, but we don't realize the impact. And I think what we need to get to, I think very good example was that we had this Finland-Estonia like 200 like event at the City Hall in Helsinki. And we had a panel discussion like this one. And then Jan Praks, so he's a professor at Aalto University, so obviously from Estonia. And he's doing space activity. And he's like running the space program. And then he said that it's like sad that neither Finland or Estonia has a space agency like Sweden. Sweden is tens of years ahead of us. That we should create a space agency in Finland and Estonia, and then we can compete with Sweden and like everybody. And it's like, why should we create two? Why don't we create like the finest space agency together? And it will be much better, much more attractive. And then, you have a fantastic like e-government program, you have the e-residency. Why wouldn't Finland use the same? I mean, not build a separate one, but why wouldn't we use one and the same? We have some good practices also, believe it or not, in the Finnish government side. We have very effective, tax office and processes. So, there are some things there that I'm sure that we can kind of like leverage. And there are many like examples like this where we can take one system, use the same, and take one approach, use the same. We don't always need to do separate ones. I mean, why wouldn't we have, for example, one regulator that regulates like the financial services, together? And then we go out there and say that, hey, by the way, now that you need to escape that island at the periphery of Europe, what is it called again, UK? When you need to escape from there, why don't you come to the Helsinki-Tallinn area, because we have like fantastic regulation, we have a fantastic environment. Guess what? Everybody speaks English, and we have the best schools on the planet for your kids. And it's not like the US where people get shot in the streets like every day and teachers carry arms. So it's like safe. So if you're, now living in London, your kids can walk to the school without like bodyguards and stuff. It's like safe. So I think that these are the kind of things that we need to start working on. And again, Helsinki and Tallinn together, and not like Helsinki, Tallinn, okay, we do things and they're similar, but we actually need to do this. And then, I was in Japan and they have this JETRO organization, so Japanese like industry. There's like 600-700 Japanese companies that need to escape the UK. So suggesting that we go there together with JETRO and we attract all the Japanese companies and say that we can save you. Just move to Helsinki and Tallinn and it'll be like fantastic, and it's a short flight to Tokyo, so you're like almost home.
So, and it's not only just that it's safe. Hey, the Finns are the most happiest people in the world.
Yeah,
we are the
even
63rd. Maybe we have something to learn from there, and the climate has got nothing to do with that.
And the train will fix that.
Yeah, probably. But also, I wanted to point out what Kadri mentioned. Basically, the joint labor market is one of the key drivers for actually making it happen. So the possibility of working on either side is still a very, very big deal. And what I would like to also think that basically the future of work, and reflecting a bit on the ideas that Peter was telling, is the future of work is a question of the future of the freelancer, because as we see these technologies evolving, we got artificial intelligence coming on, we got the different self-driving cars, whatever, all these kind of things. It means that the meaning of work will change as well. So the idea is that if we could create this joint labor market perfect for the freelancer and for the digital nomad, this is a place that we can actually attract a lot of people. And with the ideas of e-residency in Estonia, for example, yes, these guys can come here and do something, but they don't necessarily have to be location dependent. Maybe if they don't like the cold and the bad weather, they still can work from Thailand or wherever. But they could be still economically connected to this region. So and having this creating this finest space thing and finest AI researcher and finest everything. I think this region can be very competitive, and in this part, sharing this know-how, because the Finns were making mobile phones a very long time ago, and we were the ones to actually benefit from this. Let's take the next step and take the new technologies. Let's be a laboratory for the world for testing these things, and I think we have a great chance. But to make this happen, we actually need to start thinking differently. Let's not consider him as a lunatic.
It's okay. That's okay as well.
Why do you say that, Marten?
Because I think many people still think that the idea he's preaching is unreal, but I would claim that it's not. And we need to start actually really considering, and it's only about the mindset. It's got nothing to do with, I don't know, investments or whatever.
But I think what is very important is that the tunnel, I mean, this discussion already is a great example of like the importance of the tunnel. I mean, even without the tunnel, we need to start thinking about what we can do together. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from doing all the things that we discussed, even without the tunnel. I mean, it's a short ferry ride, 2 hours. It works. So we can start today, and then we'll make it better, and it will be 20 minutes. And then, you know, Hyperloop, and it's like not even 20.
Yeah. And the joint task force that Kadri mentioned, I think this should grow bigger and not only think about the tunnel thing. It's about creating this common economical area, this cultural connection. Finland is anyway the biggest export partner of Estonia by far for a long time. Let's keep this information, let's coordinate it, let's make it better, and maybe that's one of the things that this joint government meeting should also consider, to see that it's possible to put this together.
Yeah, we can go to London together and explain to the companies there that we have like a perfect solution for their Brexit problems.
Well, I think that Peter made it absolutely clear that if we are talking about this project, then we are not keeping in mind only those people who are already living in Tallinn area and Helsinki area, but we are also, well, the project is only for that reason that it makes our area more attractive, and we will benefit, and we will benefit also out of growing numbers of citizens and inhabitants. So keeping in mind this, then it will basically solve one of the major problems that we have right now, that people who want to earn, well, for their education, well, educational reasons, they are able to earn higher salaries than we are paying right now. They would return to the attractive environment, and not only them, but people who maybe don't know about Estonia and Finland right now, but if they discover that world's longest subsea tunnel is here, they at least notice us.
Yeah, and the attractiveness of the region, like again, Kristjan is working on the talent attraction and moving people around. I think a mind shift needs to go about thinking about talent attraction also. I know that the next panel is about placemaking and planning as well. Then usually when people think about attracting talents, they think about the social system, they think about education, they think about taxes and the economical system. We need to start thinking about space here in Estonia, because the good quality public space is something that combines everything together. And if we can make this city and this country attractive also physically, this means that we need to think a lot, and Kadri is doing a lot of work around public transportation. We need to think about different technologies like self-driving cars and so on. We need to make these connections more tighter. But this is the only way we can, because I think Estonia already has a relatively competitive environment in terms of for business making or for yes, we do need to work on, I don't know, some kindergarten issues and some school issues for attracting foreigners here. but actually making the quality and synergical space happen needs to take like physical power. And I think today is a very good day to manifest this, because the Tallinn music team has done a really, really great job and is closing down Viru Ring, the conjunction, the central conjunction for traffic, to make room for human scale space. And this is something that we need, because this is something that binds everything together.
Okay, thanks. I think we have time for one question from the audience.
Thank you very much. Yeah, hi, my name is Karl-Henrik. I work with urban planning in northern Norway. Thank you very much for presenting this fascinating project. And Peter, you're doing an outstanding job as an ambassador. I would like to applaud to you. Yeah, some more good news for you. It's about cargo. I understand that you are talking about 9 million passengers and that this is a fantastic business model. We are working with railway in northern Norway as well, and we have lots of cargo. It's salmon, it's seafood.
Yes.
Yeah, Norway is making a value creation today by oil and gas, and it's fading out. And we have studies that by the year of 2040, it will not be oil and gas anymore. It will be salmon, seafood. We expect 400–500% more seafood production by the year 2040. And the problem is we need a railway to get it down there to the continent. And so my suggestion to you is, as you have a great project, but try to see the railway networks through whole Europe. And in Sweden you have railway to Kiruna, and in Finland you have to Rovaniemi area.
Yeah, we're going to do the Kirkenes connection.
Yeah, also you need Kirkenes or Kilpisjärvi, Tromsø. Also if you have this connection, you can bring the salmon down, and this is even more better for your business model. Then you have passengers and Chinese and salmon, and everybody's taking the train, and this will be cool.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we can even like call it the salmon train, so that's fine. But I think that of course, I mean, we didn't want to kind of like go too much into the kind of like the Arctic connection, but we have many discussions ongoing about then of course not stopping the rail, you know, like in Helsinki, but then we go to Tampere, and then we go to Rovaniemi, we go to Kirkenes, so that's kind of like the current plan. And of course what we love about people in Norway is that I don't know if the oil and gas is actually like fading, but because of the oil and gas, you have a bit of capital in Norway, so it's also a very interesting source for funding for the Arctic Rail, but also for the tunnel. So I think that we expect to have some very interesting contributions from Norway for the tunnel and the Arctic connection. So I think that it's also, again, that it's not just about Finland and Estonia, it's about the Nordic and Baltic, and maybe we should talk about like the new Nordics or something like that. And I think that then when you start looking at that, we're a very interesting part of the world. I mean, again, if you look at what is going on, you know, some people are building walls and they're, you know, like doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So what I have been saying is that one of the reasons why we have to do all of these things, and we actually have to step up to the plate and provide some leadership, because here in this part of the world, we are the last hope of the free world. And that's actually like very serious. I think that we need to step up and we need to stand up for like the Nordic values. And I think that's what makes our society so attractive. I mean, there are many Americans who are now moving here. Why? Because they have some kind of problem with the current regime. So I think that this is also something that we should kind of keep in mind.
So Estonia has had a topic about smell lately in Tartu region, and I think that this smelly trains of salmon going through Estonia actually would be a great idea. But Helen.
I think we are...
Hi, I just want to ask a question. Sorry, maybe this... Hi, I'm Helen, hi. Maybe this was already touched upon, but what intrigues me in this project is this concept of a connected world. And as our team is starting a festival in Narva, on the border to Russia, EU and Russian border, and we will be helping Narva city to become the European capital of culture in 2024. So this kind of a thinking that, let's get Northern Europe connected through Helsinki, Tallinn, Narva, St. Petersburg, over to Vladivostok and back to Asia. I mean, is this something we can think towards? Or, I mean, this would not only change Tallinn and Helsinki, but dramatically would change Narva. And if we can take the train line, fix it. So we need a better connection with the trains as well, of course, back from Narva to Russia. So, I mean, how far in your brain do you think about it like that?
It's already, the good news is that it's already happening. So you have the Ida-Ilu, so the Belt and Road project that China is doing. So they are very serious about making that connection happen. So there will be, and actually if you look at the latest kind of like plans and the maps, what we have managed to do now is that there are like two destinations in Europe, one of them being Helsinki-Tallinn, and then they go like to Madrid or something like that if you look at like the new Silk Road. So we're very much part of that discussion, and also there is like the Arctic Belt and Road, so the salmon train will be like contributing to that. And I think that what is very important here is that with all the craziness that is going on now, like if you look at global like politics and all of that, that there is an even bigger incentive for China to connect with Europe, which is still like the biggest economy on the planet. I mean, bigger than the US and bigger than China. And I think that both for Finland, Estonia, all Nordic countries, I mean, we are open economies, open democracies. So it's again important for us that free trade continues to happen and all of that. So I think that there's a lot of reasons why. But I think the Narva thing, I like the point there because I really believe that. Okay, I mean we can add more sanctions like towards Russia and all of that, but I think that at some point we need to start engaging in a dialogue, and I think that if we take like North Korea or we take Iran as examples, I don't think sanctions had any effect. Like in the end, it was only when like dialogue started to happen that, and okay, North Korea will see like what happens, but anyway, I think that it's important for us all that there is some sanity in Russia at some point.
I just want to add, because right now, when we finish this, we can all join a discussion in the development of the Narva city, but the thinking for us in there is that if we think about Narva, it's Russian-spoken EU, and that's very unique, and everybody needs wiser, more sophisticated approach how to approach the issue Russia, and we need to continue collaborating with the private sector and the good open-minded people of Russia. I mean, over here this weekend I think we have 20 bands from Russia. There's a punk revival. The music scene is more exciting than ever, and there's like 30 to 50 music entrepreneurs and journalists here. So it's like the people-to-people and the private sector collaboration with Russia is so important.
Yeah, actually, this is one thing that I have to share a story actually from China here. So I was invited to a friend's house and then met with his family, and he had like some other like friends over, and then we're discussing. And this was like in a suburb of Beijing, and we had like a barbecue, and like it was very nice. And then the topic of Japan. And of course, in China, Japan, there's now and then, there's like the Nanjing like massacre, and like some very bad things happened, of course, in history. But then my friend said that he has actually a lot of friends in Japan, and he was telling me that actually they're really nice people. I mean, even though they're Japanese. And then I was like saying that, yeah, actually, most people in the world are nice people. I mean, I have many friends in Russia. Did you know that Russian people are like nice? And I think that this is, the kind of like thing here that I really believe that it's important that we engage in this kind of like grassroots, person-to-person startup to startup, company to company, but really it's about the people in the end. And then, like you have this kind of reaction that, hey, wait a minute, I mean, these Japanese people are like nice. And I think that was like such a interesting like statement that he had just, like met with Japanese people, and clearly they're not like the ones that, murdered and raped, people in Nanjing during the war. And I think this is something that we should also like not forget. And I was actually in Moscow for a startup event the day they celebrated the annexation of like Crimea, and then Putin gave a talk and like all of that, and then I was like right there in the Red Square, and I was just like looking at what was going on, and it was just the same atmosphere as when like we win the ice hockey world championship in Finland, that everybody is like out in the streets and celebrating, and then you realize that it's very easy to get people into this like craziness. And I mean, again, US and what's going on, that I really think that because of that, it's so important to engage in dialogue. I mean, if you can like then like isolate and like, okay, we can't trust those people, and like it always escalates and it becomes really bad. So again, it's much better to build tunnels to bring people together than to build walls.
And the final words on this to Kadri.
Well, just a short remark, because Helen was mentioning Narva, and like Helen, I do believe that this is a wonderful opportunity when Narva becomes a cultural capital of Europe in 2024. But right now we don't have fast connection between Tallinn, Narva, and for example, St. Petersburg, and this is only the reason because it slows down because of the tax and customs procedures. So this is different in the border between Finland and Russia. So something that we have to achieve before anybody dares to invest into fast connections. But another thing, well, I'm actually running for a train that is a slow train, but just a last remark. Peter was telling that the Rail Baltic is slow, will be too slow, and you mentioned 160 kilometers. Actually, it will be 240. That is significantly faster than 160.
It's a little bit better, but it's still not 400.
And still not 1,200.
So we have room for improvement. But thank you all for this interesting panel, and I think that we all would like to continue a bit longer, but our time is up. Thank you, Peter, for being this one-man wrecking ball and keeping this whole thing going. That's amazing. And Kadri and Marten for keeping the Estonian side, pushing that as well. So keep that going as well. So hopefully we will be riding that train soon. Thank you.
Thank you.